Radio check. Hey, freaking good evening, everybody. The Master's Path. Why the backwards method is the only way to 2,000 plus either. The logic of the end game. In this example, in chess, most people start in the beginning. They get lost in the opening theory, in the mid game, chaos. But the Master's Path, we start to visit line. We don't know how to deliver a mate, but a queen. Why does it matter? If you win a pawn on move 10, today I'm going to show you in these games why the backwards method is the ultimate shortcut to mastery. This is my first tour ever. One of my mans from IRL. This is the first game of me just going back and forth, teaching him how to king and queen checkmate without causing a stalemate. The final objective, king and queen versus king. The focus, total synergy, and geometrical vacuum. Queen to f2 immediately checks, forces the box like this, forces the king to commit to a one box. King forward. Let's move to move 6. You see how everything I'm just making from all these moves. Let's interact the box at the kings. This box gets a little bit smaller. No, box opposition. The box gets smaller. The box gets smaller. The box gets smaller. Forces the king onto the first rank. Now, the objective is to put your queen on the second rank and simply move it to the farthest point on the board. Move queen 7. The result of the backwards method, we understand the jailer role of the queen. My student misses this, and the rest of the game is irrelevant. How can my student play better? The efficiency, use the king and queen together to shrink the box faster. Don't shake the queen, corner him. And this is me showing him in a basic example of how it only takes the 11 move checkmate. Is it more efficient? Is it more of a better way? Yes. But let's transition to game 2, which was a pawn meeting, taking the basics about a pawn race. Black to move. I was white. I immediately go b4. He goes a6. I go a4. He goes b7. I take the opposition on b5. Boom, b5. This is the escort. You cannot push the highway pawn without the king as your shield. The king guards 3 key squares. This square, this square, and this square. Black is forced into a zigzag position, which he needs to go either to the right to hold on to this square, or if he goes more back, you take more space with the king. Regardless, let's move both. I take opposition on the king to stop him and force him into zigzag again. So king guard this square, and the king can only go here. You have to go back. He goes back, I go back again. He moves. I push my pawn to a6. Now the transition to move 10. He immediately gives me a chance to, what's it called? To take opposition on him. Freaking, no, not yet. To push my pawn to a7, d8. I immediately don't promote right away. I put my king on c6. Why? Stop this square. Stop this square. To stop these 2 squares. If the king invades, and it's a mate in 1, or mate in 2. King goes to c8. He gives me a free mate in 1. What is the lesson behind this? How come my student did better? By me playing keysting, I apply the step aside rule. I give the king 1 square option at c6, so I can promote with checkmate on the next move. How can my student play better? Avoid the empty move. King e4. It's better to keep the king centralized. The main opposition or flexibility. King to a4. Let's go back. Let's go to king a4 to track. No, not me. No, me. I'm saying me. I made a mistake. Actually, this was in the backwards position. I could have played this better and more efficiently. My end. So let's go into the third game. A rook conversion is focused on liquidating the squares in the ladder final. This is from me teaching my opponent about the Fyodor and Lukaia position, which is an advanced endgame concept, which is basically freaking this one right here. Wait, is this it? No, I believe it's this one. It's black to move. King he immediately attacks my pawn. He gives me a chance to build the bridge. I build my bridge to build rook to b6, king f6. I immediately go for a king, rook, and pawn fortress. Rook b6 is the 3rd rank squeeze. You prevent the Fyodor's defense before it even starts. We take away the opponent's defense oxygen by cutting off the king off. Now even transition slowly. I build the fortress as the rook guards this square. The rook guards the square, guards this freaking a d-file. The king protects the pawn, the rook protects the pawn, and the rook protects the king. So, even the transition, d5, he goes e8, I go e5, e7, a6, d8. Oh man, my fault. Let me correct myself. Rook to a6, king to d8, rook to a7, king to c8. I immediately go rook to h7. He goes d8, f5, king to f6, king to e8, rook to e7 check, king to f8, rook to h7 check. No, rook to h7, king e8, e7. E7 is the breakthrough. Why? Because of the bridge, the king protects the pawn, and it's the opponent's turn, so he is forced to move. Immediately he steps out the way. I go the escort for my pawn again to force a promotion. He goes d6, I queen, and I immediately go to the concept of the ladder mate. I step my king out the way to immediately right here, so I can immediately shove my rook here and literally just pre-move like this. So, next moves, I do a ladder mate, and I win. How come I should have played better? Instead of what's it called? Immediately, if I go back, now I'm not sure me, how I could have played better. Even, obviously, he lost because of that. Let's go back. 11. I didn't have to do h7 right away. That was a waiting move. I could have immediately pushed my pawn, which I honestly did not know. So what does this mean for myself? When the math is solved, I need to not hesitate. I just need to liquidate. Keep everything simple. Keep everything simple because you can checker the king and rook anyways too. So to close the math, my students, I'm struggled a bit because there's sometimes I look for unnecessary moves. I taught them to look at the geometries. When you look at endgames first, you stop guessing, you start calculating. That's how you break the 2000 elo barrier. Obviously, to go over the game system again, freaking the king versus queen, the final objective, the jailer, then the box out, the gaming, the logic, the pawn race in the highway, the escorting and shielding of the pawn, the rook win, the breakthrough and the squeeze with no oxygen, and the draw. This is a theoretical draw that is the last one before I get into. I'm gonna go. So this is me and my friend very late at the time, so I was extremely tired, but teaching about theoretical draw. To go. This is the endgame found. Those last two games are endgame foundations. The methodology is reverse engine logic, the Capillanca system. The history of this message, where we start, is my opponent obviously c4. I play c4. The backward method or endgame first approach was championed as the third world champion Jose Raul Capillanca, believed to be the one that no one could understand the power of the piece until the board was near empty. In the opening, pieces are crowded, the endgame's pieces are pure. So you're able to efficientize the learning of the value of every single piece. And the goal is by learning how to make with a queen first, the student learns how to get their final destination at every single pawn they push in the opening. A detailed game breakdown for myself. Let's even go to game 4, the theoretical draw. The concept, minimize mating material, a resource management, historical origin, a theoretical draw theory, the logic of 0-0 evaluation. Me, as I recover from a worse position, a messy game into a queen plus knight endgame, I do the forced move draw, move 65. Queen takes a3. Let's go to it. This is a teaching move. Even though white is I am winning, I liquidate the only piece that can make the queen to prove a point. The lesson is, the knight is a pallet or blink juggler, but if it cannot deliver, may in a row. This teaches the students to respect their boss weapons and never trade away the sense of false security. Let's go. I go c4. Opponent goes d5. I go to I do the English Open. He responds to the queen's opening, queen pawn opening. He immediately goes d4 to push his pawn again, which my mistake was I should have honestly traded it off. I went d3 to stop that pawn, but also gives them a wedge pawn, so it stops my knight to develop here. Pointing for the English opening. e6, freaking bishop g2, bishop b4 check. Blind block the bishop. He protects his knight. I trade bishop for knight, which has pushed me in a more pressured position because there's a lot more pressure on me. Here, here, here. It's pretty irritating and pretty annoying to fight against right now. Even though what's it called, I'm a bit more equal in development. Black has way more space currently. Knight to f3, e5. I capture the hanging pawn because I'm in a worse position. I'm going to have to show no mercy. Protect both of these two pawns. I'll protect this square, this square, this square, this square, this square. He goes queen to e7. I move my knight back simply to knight to f3. f5 bishop. I immediately take the other hanging pawn, attack this freaking bishop here to remove the center. He takes knight to d3 plus check. I immediately am forced to give back the trade to lose my queen. He takes, I castle. He takes my other pawn. I move the knight back. I use this pawn as bait. Freaking castle's move to use this pawn as bait to capture backwards of the knight potentially. He goes backwards and fall for it. I capture it. He goes queen to e2. I immediately develop my knight to the natural developing square. I know this pawn is hanging, so I have to make a commitment on what I'm going to do. I allow him to capture. I take the outpost, threatening this fork. I asked my student what am I threatening. He did not realize, so I go for the fork. I take the rook. He pushes his pawn. I check the king again. Force the absolute pin. I put pressure on the pin piece. Queen takes a1. I force him to do a queen trade. Obviously, I immediately capture back. He moves out the pin. I check again. He moves back. I take off his last minor piece. He takes back. I immediately attempt to make an isolated pawn. He moves there and ignore it. Does not take my minor piece for that. I take more control of these squares. Rook to e8. I trade off my material to keep it very simple. A knight and king endgame. g5. Pawn takes g5. King to f5. Knight f4, f6, c5, bishop takes king takes g5, d4, h5, knight to e6 capture, knight to e6 check, king to g4, c6, h3, knight to g7. This was a little bit of a mistake. I shouldn't have hesitated here, but my opponent made a mistake, so I had the punishment. c7, king takes h2, c8 equals promotion to queen, king takes g3. I immediately take the pawn. He pushes his pawn to h4. I check the king. I immediately move the knight to attack it again. I move the queen to f1 to attack the pawn again. He gives up the pawn. I defend the knight, a5, e7. Into move. Let's go to move 65. The question is, why? I lost my final pawn, and honestly I was too tired and too panicked to calculate it, so why did I do this? Why did I do this? King takes a3, queen takes a3. It's to force a theoretical draw due to insufficient material because a knight and king can never checkmate a king. The lesson is, the knight was a powerful blinker jumper, but it cannot deliver mate alone. That I taught my students to respect the boss weapons and never trade away for a sense of false security. So even though I was in a worse position, I forced a draw. A theoretical one too. So, what is the point of this? Point of this? I hope you guys enjoyed the opening, and hope you guys learned something new. You guys have a good rest of your evening, and that's all. Over and out.